Okay, guys, welcome back. And this is the second reading that we'll be doing in portfolio management, which is reading 86. The good part about reading 86 is that in reading 85, most of the things get covered. And like I have this knack of explaining each and everything when I'm explaining a particular chapter. The thing is, reading 86 ka almost all the content has been covered in 85, right? So yeah, but to look at it in this way, we'll just get a opportunity to have a look at a few things again so that वापस brush up हो जाएगा, right? So you will get enough explanation on the same thing so that everything is there in your head. But I'm sure that, as we go through, you will realize that everything is that. So yeah, without wasting any time, this particular chapter is about the basics of portfolio planning and construction, right? So in the last chapter, I explained you all something that, first is the planning step, the next is the execution step, and the third is the evaluation step कि यार check करोगे कि कैसे क्या किया, right? So now this particular chapter is about that planning. ठीक है? I mean, these steps are large, these steps are big, right? So we as portfolio managers of future, we need to understand each and every step in detail. And this particular chapter talks about the planning part, right? Execution भी आगे आगे आएगा. पहले we'll do the planning part. So, as I said, in planning part, the most important thing between an investor and a portfolio manager is the investment policy statement, right? The investment policy statement needs to be uh, prepared. First of all, things need to be discussed between the two. Okay. After it is discussed and agreed upon is when the IPS is formed, then it is signed, and then the execution starts. So yeah, I mean, as I said, a lot of things will be repetitive. Let's just go through. So investment policy statement, document that describes investors' risk, return goals. It governs the actions of the investment manager by keeping investors' situation in radar. Okay. Basically, IPS, see, as an investment manager, as a portfolio manager, I will not be managing money for just one client, right? I will have 15 clients. For me to be able to remember exactly what my client needs from me, there is an IPS that will constantly govern me. So, for example, if Mr. Rahul wants is my client, and if I am the investment manager, I will always use the IPS, see that okay, this is the risk that Mr. Rahul has agreed to. This is the goal. So, if I select this stock ABC, is it suitable for Rahul? It is. Chalo done. Right? That's how you would do that. So, it is a governing document. Okay. Components of IPS, client description, Mr. Rahul, what he does, background stuff, statement of purpose, okay, exactly what's to be done, what is the purpose of, this association, क्यों मिले हैं यहाँ पे दो लोग, and what are the goals. Statement of duties and responsibilities. See, when two people enter into an arrangement, it is not only the investment manager who has to do it, duties, right? It is also the duty of the client to fulfill some sort of responsibilities, to fulfill some things, as to giving power, the right amount of power of attorney, and signing of documents, giving a good go ahead uh, in the period of urgency. तो ये सब उनका भी काम है, right? So that is their procedures. What is the overall procedure of selecting an investment? What would be the key factors which the client would like the investment manager to look at? Investment objectives, investment constraints. जैसे मैंने बताया, जैसे objectives is all about risk return. Okay. Constraints is all about that time, liquidity, legal, unique circumstance that we discussed, right? Investment guidelines, the overall, the guideline of investing, कि क्या क्या चीजें हम screen करेंगे, पार करेंगे, what will be the parameters on which I judge an investment. Okay. Performance evaluation and appendix. Okay. Basically a lot of detailing of a lot of things that is not required in the main document, right? So client description, statement of purpose, statement of duties and responsibilities, procedures, investment objectives, investment constraints, investment guidelines, performance evaluation, and then appendix, which talks about a lot of maybe very not very important things, but some detailing that is also required as a part of the documentation. So that is there in the appendix. Right? The above components ensure that the investment manager understands the client's situation and frames the strategy on the basis of investors' ability to take risk in light of expected returns. Correct? इससे मुझे exactly पता चलेगा कि मेरा जो investor है, okay, उसका क्या requirements है, उसका क्या constraints है, और उस हिसाब से मैं मेरी strategy बनाऊंगा, so that my investor is also secure that Monil जो कुछ भी decision लेगा, that will be in light of my risk objectives. Right? So yeah, as a part of IPS, the first thing that you do is risk and return objectives. Okay. So there can be different ways to discuss risk. Okay. Let's say if I am an investment manager and someone else is my client or a prospective client, I will just ask them that, okay, what kind of a risk do you want to take? Okay. So speaking about risk can be in either of the two ways. It can be absolute risk, it can be relative risk. Okay, कुछ भी हो सकता है, right? Now when I say absolute risk, what is it? I've given an example. Okay, objectives set based on the percentage of portfolio value or any absolute number. It has nothing to do with a benchmark reference. This is a standalone in nature and can be nominal or in real terms. इसका मतलब क्या है? Let's say investor is planning to invest 1 crore rupees. Okay. So absolute risk objective is like the investor says that, Monil, I would not like to lose more than 5% of my portfolio investment. This is what? This is 5,000 rupees. Sorry, 5 lakh rupee, right? उस हिसाब से होगा. In the same way, okay, investor can also say that, Monil, I would not like to lose more than 20,000 rupees or 20 lakh rupees, whatever it is. So anything which is absolute, okay, so this 5% or 20,000 or whatever we are calling, right? This is absolute. It's not comparing anything with anyone. The investor is very clear about his or her investment and the threshold, right? This is called as an absolute risk objective. Example, no greater than a 5% probability of returns below -5% in any 12-month period. Okay. इसका मतलब क्या है? No greater than a 5% probability of return below -5% in any 12-month period. इसका मतलब ये है कि 5 मेरा पोर्टफोलियो का जो वैल्यू है वो 5% से नीचे जाने की प्रोबेबिलिटी 5% से ज्यादा नहीं होनी चाहिए. ओके ओके, गिविंग यू अ थोड़ा I'll explain you again. Basically the investor is saying that, Monil, मेरा 1 करोड़ का पोर्टफोलियो है, 1 करोड़ में 5%, बेसिकली 5 लाख से ज्यादा पैसा गवाना नहीं चाहिए, और अगर वो हो भी रहा है तो उसकी पॉसिबिलिटी 5% होनी चाहिए. बेसिकली आई हैव अ पोर्टफोलियो ऑफ 1 करोड़. I don't like to lose anything above 5 lakh rupee. And if in case if there is a situation of a loss of more than 5 lakh, then the probability of such situation should just be 5%. Only 5% of the time my portfolio should fall below 5 lakh, वरना मुझे पसंद नहीं आएगा. Okay, this is an absolute risk objective. Okay, then comes next another part, not decrease in value by more than 2% at any point over the 12-month period. मतलब मेरा 1 करोड़ का पोर्टफोलियो है, पूरे साल में कभी भी मुझे नहीं चाहिए कि मेरा पोर्टफोलियो 2% से ज्यादा नीचे गिरे. ठीक है, विच मीन्स 2 लाख से ज्यादा मेरा लॉस हो, मुझे नहीं चाहिए. Okay, at any point of time with no probability involved. Okay. Next is a relative risk objective. When risk and return targets are pegged, okay, pegged or compared to a specific benchmark like a broad index or thematic index over a period of time. Let's say a broad index is Nifty. Let's say you are a large cap investor and I am your investment manager. Okay. So you can say that, Monil, मुझे Nifty से I don't want you to lose more than 5% than the Nifty returns. Okay, for example, there is an example here. Returns will not be less than 12-month Euro LIBOR over the 12-month period. इसका मतलब ये है कि 12 month का जो यूरो लाइबोर है, लाइबोर रेट, ओके, लाइबोर रेट क्या है वो आप गूगल भी कर सकते हो और वो डेरिवेटिव्स में भी कवर होगा और फिक्स्ड इनकम में भी होगा. बेसिकली लाइबोर का रेट जो कुछ भी है उससे कम मेरा रिटर्न नहीं होना चाहिए, सिंपल. या फिर let's say आप large cap investor हो and the benchmark that you have set is Nifty. then as an investor you can say that Monil, I would not like to lose uh, I would not like to you to earn a return less than निफ्टी. ठीक है, इसका मतलब ये है कि निफ्टी जो भी कमा रहा है उससे अगर नीचे आ रहा है कुछ तो मुझे वो पसंद नहीं आएगा. So the next part is returns to be equal or higher than Nifty 50 plus 5% alpha over the period of next 12 months. So the return objective is such. यहाँ पे return objective बताया, यहाँ पे ये बोला है let's say if I am the investment manager, तो आप मुझे ये आके बोल रहे हो कि मोनिल निफ्टी जो कुछ भी ये साल कमाएगा, ध्यान से सुनना, निफ्टी ये साल जो कुछ भी कमाएगा, ओके, उससे 5% ज्यादा मुझे कमा के दो. ओके, दिस इज माय रिटर्न ऑब्जेक्टिव. ओके, लेट्स से इफ यू वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम अ रिस्क पर्सपेक्टिव, तो वो भी बोल सकते हैं कि यार निफ्टी जो भी कमाएगा उससे नीचे कुछ भी कमा के दोगे तो उसका कोई मतलब नहीं है, then तो I am better off investing in an ETF only. Na? Why am I investing with you, right? So that becomes another relative objective. Basically, relative is when you are comparing your risk or return with a benchmark, right? Here, the example of Nifty that I have given, Nifty plus 5%, it's a return objective, right? So that's the point. So risk and return objectives, right? Absolute and relative. Absolute में number या percentage पे बात होगी, relative में you peg it with a benchmark. It can be a return objective, can be a risk objective, whatever it is, right? Then in the last video, I explained you exactly that investors' ability and willingness both are equally important to decide the appetite of the investor, risk appetite or risk tolerance of an investor, right? So ability is based on the facts of an investor's life, like bank balance, income, age, responsibilities, constraints, security, etc. कि यार बंदे का बैंक बैलेंस क्या है, इनकम कितनी आ रही है, बंदे की एज क्या है, ओवरऑल उसके माथे पे कितनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज है, कितना फ्री है वो लाइफ में, राइट, ओवरऑल उसके पास क्या इनफ वेल्थ पड़ी है, क्या नहीं, राइट. दिस डिसाइड्स द एबिलिटी ओवरऑल ऑफ, इफ ऑल दीज थिंग्स दैट आर मेंशन्ड हियर, इफ दे आर गुड, then the ability is good enough, right? That is nice. Willingness is based on investors' own attitude and beliefs, but is quite subjective in nature, right? मेरे पास बहुत पैसा होगा, मेरे पास ability बहुत होगी, but शायद से मेरा मन नहीं है इतना रिस्क लेने का. That is willingness. Willingness is very subjective in nature. It's not objective, right? So when ability and willingness combine, they decide the risk appetite or the risk tolerance of an investor, right? So when the ability is high and the willingness is high, that means the risk tolerance of an investor is extremely high. When the ability is high but willingness is low, that means the risk tolerance for an investor is moderate. When the ability is low and the willingness is high, okay, this means that the risk tolerance of the person is low. Okay, and when the ability is, let's say, low and willingness is also low, that means it is the lowest, right? So in any situation, ability takes over willingness. See, मेरी लेट्स से मुझे 6 बॉल पे 6 छक्के मारने का बहुत शौक है, बट मैं मार सकता हूं कि नहीं, एक इंपॉर्टेंट बात है, राइट? सो माई विलिंगनेस टू डू दैट इज ग्रेट, ओके, नाइस, appreciated, but ability takes over it, right? Do I really have the ability to do it, right? If one has the willingness to invest in crypto but not the ability, the investment manager should not allow the investment, right? If the investor has the ability but not the willingness, the decision of the investor will stay above everything else, right? मतलब ability है, willingness नहीं है, तो ठीक है, वो investor का मन है, उसको जिस तरीके से करना है, we are open to it, right? The constraints, as I explained, RRTTLLUU. What is this? This is basically, this forms a part. Everything is a part of IPS. This is the first part, risk and return objectives. This is the second part, risk. Okay, ability, willingness, right? This is the third part. The third part talks about TTLLUU actually. Okay, TTLLU. What is it? Let's see. Investment constraints, RRTTLLU. Okay. RR is nothing but the risk and return that we have already discussed. Correct. Understanding constraints is very important, combined with the risk and returns. Two objectives, strategies, goals for the investor in the IPS, right? सिर्फ risk और return से काम नहीं चलेगा, और बहुत कुछ है जो समझना पड़ता है. Basically risk and return, okay, जो risk और return है ना, ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ बंदे की इच्छा और बंदे की ताकत से ही फिक्स नहीं होती है. In a person's life, there are a lot of circumstances, a lot of responsibilities, and a lot of factors that play out that also dictate the level of risk or the return that the person can think about, right? And which are as follows. Number one, liquidity. ability to turn investment assets into cash. Cash needs are a part of investors' life like tuition fee, living expenses. Investors with high needs shall avoid alternative investments or thinly traded instruments. Basically, जिसको liquidity का बहुत जरूरत है, उसको लॉक इन वाले इन्वेस्टमेंट्स या तो इलिक्विड इन्वेस्टमेंट्स या तो प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में ज्यादा पार्ट नहीं लेना चाहिए. Then comes legal and regulatory. Certain investors like trusts, corporates, qualified accounts might be restricted to invest in particular asset class or percentage allocation restrictions on a few investments, right? There are like there are a lot of investors like trusts that are formed or corporates or HNIs that are not allowed to invest in particular asset classes. Now there are a lot of reasons to it. Let's say मैं मेरे इंडस्ट्री में बहुत बड़ा खिलाड़ी हूँ, राइट? तो मैं मेरे इंडस्ट्री में ही शायद से मुझे अलाउ नहीं करेंगे पैसा इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए बिकॉज आई हैव एक्सेस टू अ लॉट ऑफ इनसाइडर इन्फॉर्मेशन एंड आई कैन काइंड ऑफ मैनिपुलेट द मार्केट. And in that case, the legal and regulatory things need to be adhered to. I need to follow them, and that's why I have to avoid it. Right? Time horizon. Longer the horizon, like for example, endowment that we discussed in the last video, right? Endowment has a longer horizon. Higher is the ability to take risk. Institutions like pension funds, sovereign wealth funds. Okay, sovereign wealth funds. Sovereign wealth funds are like what? ADIA, right? Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, right? Qatar Investment Authority, right? Saudi's PIF, right? A lot of things. So foundations can afford to invest long-term and riskier but equally rewarding investments, right? So long-term horizon वाले जो funds है या फिर जो institutions है, they can afford to do that. Tax situation. Besides the overall income tax rate, there are other taxes that the investor has to pay on investments depending on the type of investments. Like, for example, capital gains hai, dividends hai, income tax खुद का तो है, but capital gain tax, dividend tax, if it's an international investment, that then withholding taxes are also very important. तो वो सब है समझना बहुत जरूरी है, राइट? एंड यूनिक सर्कमस्टांसेस, जो मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया था लास्ट टाइम कि किसी को टोबैको या अल्कोहल कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना है, then that is a unique circumstance that the guy has, right? या फिर कोई किसी को ऐसा है कि जो कंपनीज कार्बन फुटप्रिंट बढ़ाती है, राइट? वहां पे इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना है, राइट? सो इफ यू हैव रियलाइज्ड this liquidity, legal, time, tax, unique circumstance, these all combine and dictate the level of risk that you can take. And that risk which you can take will dictate the level of return that you can make. करेक्ट. सो बेसिकली ये वो है कड़ी जिससे आपको पता चलेगा कि आपकी रिस्क लेने की कितनी औकात है, और वो रिस्क से वो पता चलेगा कि आपकी रिटर्न्स बनाने की कितनी औकात है, राइट? दैट इज हाउ यू विल go about building the IPS now. ठीक है? So now as an investment manager, when I know your objectives, when I know your tolerance, when I know your other constraints, is when I can prepare a strategic asset allocation for you. ठीक है? तब जाके मैं एक स्ट्रेटेजिक एसेट एलोकेशन बना सकता हूँ जिसमें बेसिकली मैं एक ब्रॉड वे में बोल सकता हूँ दैट ओके मिस्टर राहुल की ये कंस्ट्रेंट्स है, ये ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं. तो अब मिस्टर राहुल का पैसा 40% इक्विटी में डाला जाए, 30% डेट में डाला जाए, 20% गोल्ड में डाला जाए, 10% रियल एस्टेट में डाला जाए, एग्जाम्पल, राइट? सो दैट्स हाउ आई कैन क्रिएट. सो आफ्टर एन आईपीएस इज क्रिएटेड, the strategic asset allocation is the next step in portfolio management. Strategic asset allocation is nothing but setting asset allocation scheme for the funds to be invested for the investor, setting percentage allocations between equity, debt, RE, alternative investments, subclasses of these assets, and so on and so on, right? Mantra: correlation between asset classes should be low, but correlation within asset classes needs to be high. इसका मतलब क्या? Okay. Let's say debt है, equity है, रियल एस्टेट है, ठीक है? तीनों का एक दूसरे के साथ कोरिलेशन कम है, राइट? कि अगर एक नीचे जाता है तो दूसरा मैनेज कर लेता है, दूसरा नीचे जाता है तो तीसरा मैनेज कर लेता है, विच मींस दैट ओवरऑल नेट नेट डाइवर्सिफिकेशन बेनिफिट्स यहाँ पे इतना मिलेगा कि आपका पोर्टफोलियो का रिस्क बहुत मैनेज रहेगा और वॉलेटिलिटी भी मैनेज रहेगा. बट एट द सेम टाइम, so yes, we like low correlation between asset classes, but we also love high correlation within the asset classes. मतलब let's say equity और debt के बीच में low correlation हो तो मेरे portfolio का फायदा है, but within my equities portfolio, let's say उसमें अगर 10 स्टॉक है तो वो सब में high correlation होगा तो मुझे और फायदा होगा. क्यों? क्योंकि एक ऊपर जाएगा तो सब ऊपर जाएंगे, और लेट्स से एक नीचे जाएगा तो सब नीचे जाएंगे, बट उसके सामने मेरा डेट मुझे संभाल देगा. So within the asset classes, the correlation needs to be high so that थोड़ा रिटर्न अगर एक स्टॉक में बढ़ रहा है तो सब में और बढ़ रहा है. So I make very good returns in one basket. Okay. And between baskets, the relation has to be low, the correlation has to be low, but within the basket, it has to be high, right? It is like, वो माचिस जलाओ और एक जगह पे डालो तो आग हर जगह पे फैलती है. तो that is good within the asset class, not between the asset class, right? We don't want to disturb a person's overall portfolio, but within the portfolio, we also need to be, need to understand that we have to play with fire after a point of time. So that's there, right? The above mantra ensures that the strategic asset allocation is such that one maximizes returns for the risk taken. जो risk लिया है उसके लिए अगर maximum return चाहिए तो ये मंत्र follow होना मांगता है, right? Then, so strategic asset allocation is formed. Now, what is the role of this asset allocation? Okay. So once we know the IPS, the next step is to create an efficient frontier of portfolios. Okay. यहाँ पे भी मैंने लिखा है, मैं अभी भी बता रहा हूँ that this has a entire chapter covered. ठीक है. Efficient frontier के ऊपर पूरा एक आपको chapter है, and I'll be discussing it there. Right now, don't bother. ठीक है. So once we have the IPS, the next step is to create this efficient frontier of portfolios. क्या है बताऊंगा, ठीक है? अभी के लिए leave it. Compare it with the IPS and choose the asset allocation that is most suited to the client from the frontier. Basically, asset allocation है. अब अभी के लिए efficient frontier क्या है वो भूल जाओ. Basically, asset allocation के हिसाब से अब मैं अलग अलग combinations try करूंगा. That यार ये asset allocation है, तो मुझे मेरे क्लाइंट के लिए कौन से स्टॉक्स लेने चाहिए, क्या करना चाहिए, कितना रिस्क लेना चाहिए, ये करना चाहिए, इधर उधर इतना परसेंट स्टॉक्स, ये वाले स्टॉक्स में डालूं, ये करूं, वो करूं, ये सब प्लानिंग शुरू कर देना चाहिए. एंड उसके बाद जो सबसे बेटर सूटेड चीजें निकलती है मेरे इन्वेस्टर के लिए वो मैं चूज करूंगा. ठीक है, अभी के लिए इतना समझो. Investment managers may deviate from the allocations for short term for opportunistic investments and selecting stocks more than the weight in the index. Okay. So sometimes as an investment manager, you know that यार आपको आइडिया है दैट ये नेक्स्ट 2 मंथ्स पीएसयूज में बहुत बढ़िया रैली आनी है, राइट? आप जानते हो, आपको पक्की फीलिंग है. तो ऐसे टाइम पे आप क्या कर सकते हो? द कंसेप्ट इज कॉल्ड एज टैक्टिकल एसेट एलोकेशन. दैट फॉर सम टाइम, फॉर दैट सम अपॉर्चुनिस्टिक विंडो, यू कैन चेंज योर एलोकेशन. मतलब आपने डिसाइड किया था कि आप 40% से ज्यादा इक्विटी में नहीं डालोगे, बट जस्ट बिकॉज यू नो दैट यहाँ पे बहुत अपॉर्चुनिटी है, 2 महीने में कुछ तो 50-60% रिटर्न बन जाएगा, तो आप थोड़ा पैसा लेके डाल दोगे पीएसयूज में, तो आपका एलोकेशन थोड़ा बढ़ा दोगे. फॉर सम मंथ्स यू विल डेविएट फ्रॉम दैट 40% टू 45%. थोड़ा डेट में इधर उधर आप एडजस्ट कर लोगे. सो दिस इज ओके. समटाइम्स डेविएटिंग टू अर्न अल्फा इज गुड. ओके. The above approach is active portfolio management. Sometimes deviating from what is decided and using those tactical opportunities is what defines you as an active manager. Okay? So that is active management with an aim to generate alpha by creating deviating but profitable strategies, right? Risk budgeting is done in order to keep these deviations under limit. ठीक है. And radar and ensures that the deviations do not go beyond pre-decided levels. कभी कभार कर दिया ओके, हमेशा नहीं कर सकते, राइट? सो फॉर दैट टू मेंटेन दैट, क्या है, आदमी का दिमाग पोकर पोकर माइंड होता है, राइट? एक बार प्रॉफिट बन जाए तो दूसरी बार और बनाने का मन होता है, तीसरी बार और मन होता है. उसको रेडार में लाने के लिए देयर नीड्स टू बी रिस्क बजटिंग दैट यू नीड टू मेक एंड यू शुड नॉट ब्रीच दोस लेवल्स. Issues with active management. Generally, what are the general issues in life that you go in terms of active management? Having multiple managers with contrarian views, less net active management, and having all managers trying to actively beat an index. Okay. So, इसमें होता क्या है? एक्टिव मैनेजमेंट में जनरली लेट्स से 10 मैनेजर्स है ना, तो 10 में से 2 हार्डली सक्सेसफुल जाते हैं, दूसरे 8 तो एट पार ही रहते हैं या फिर अंडर परफॉर्म ही कर लेते हैं. Now, what is the reason? Okay. कभी कभार ऐसा होता है दैट विद इन अ पोर्टफोलियो देयर आर अ कपल ऑफ मैनेजर्स. कभी कभी कोई कोई टीम में 2-2 3-3 मैनेजर्स रहते हैं एंड दे हैव देयर ओन व्यूज. एक बंदा सोचता है कि इसमें पैसा डालता हूँ, दूसरा बोलता है इसमें डालता हूँ, तीसरा बोलता है इसमें डालता हूँ. तीनों का जब मिक्स होता है तो होता ये है कि प्रॉफिट नहीं बनता है, नेट नेट वहीं पे रहते हैं और बहुत ज्यादा ट्रांजैक्शन कॉस्ट लग जाता है. नेट नेट यू डोंट मेक मनी. सो दिस इज वन थिंग दैट वन शुड अवॉइड. बेसिकली एन इन्वेस्टर शुड अवॉइड कीपिंग मल्टीपल मैनेजर्स विथ डिफरेंट थिंकिंग. सेम थिंकिंग वाले लोग हैं तो ओके, दे विल क्रिएट सिनर्जीज, बट डिफरेंट थिंकिंग में आपका कुछ एक विजन नहीं क्रिएट होगा, राइट? एंड हैविंग ऑल मैनेजर्स ट्राइंग टू एक्टिवली बीट द इंडेक्स. सी, when you are keeping your money, giving money to someone, it is important to understand that सब में वो skill नहीं है कि आप सबको बोलो कि भाई beat कर लो मेरे लिए index. आप सबको actively manage करने को नहीं बोल सकते. There needs to be that specific one or two people who can do that. Not all will do it, right? So that is important. Give it to some people who can effectively do. सबको काम दोगे, सब काम बिगाड़ देंगे. Okay? आपका खाली आप टैक्स ज्यादा भरोगे, आप ट्रांजैक्शन कॉस्ट ज्यादा भरोगे, प्रॉफिट नहीं होगा. Solution to the above is to use a core satellite approach. That is to invest the major chunk of your portfolio, let's say 80-90% of your portfolio, into safe, good stocks, good passive securities, index type of investments, safe passive investments. And that 10 to 15% of the portfolio should be very, uh, you know, uh, should be funky investments, should be active investments, very small amount, right? So this will ensure that major chunk of your portfolio is safe. खाली थोड़े से आप fire के साथ खेल रहे हो, right? And then ESG considerations in portfolio management. In general, in portfolio management, what are the environmental, social, and governance considerations that you make? ये हमने corporate issuers में भी देखा, so I'll go just quickly. One is negative screening, excluding a few companies based on ESG companies. Example, some people, जैसे मैंने बताया, unique circumstances में, some investors, they don't like investing in liquor companies, tobacco companies, or drilling and extraction companies, जहाँ पे actually labor को बहुत workers को बहुत problem feel होता है working conditions में. So negative screening, some investors just screen these companies into the negative list, तो वो कभी invest नहीं करते उसमें. Positive screenings. So the same investors, they like to proactively invest in sectors like renewables, childcare, healthcare, which are, more towards the humanity side of the world, right? So वो है. Thematic investment, same as above, but more focused on a particular theme. So some investors are thematic investors. Let's say कोई investor है जिसकी expertise technology, तो वो सिर्फ IT में invest करते हैं, all over the world across, right? Impact investing, investments that provide return plus promotes positive ESG practices. Basically, investing in those assets, investing in those stocks, investing in those companies and entrepreneurs, which not only give them good returns, but at the same time are inspiring other people to do good to the environment, right? Reducing carbon footprint, taking initiatives to reduce that. Okay, inspiring other people, spreading awareness. So वो है. Then comes engagement, active ownership. Basically, this is that type of a consideration where you know that you want to use the company to promote it actively, okay, to make a difference in the society. But how will you be able to do that when you have active control in the company? So what many investors like to do is that कोई एक company रहती है उसमें majority stake buy कर लेते हैं, active ownership ले लेते हैं, and then they try to control that company, okay, positively control that company so that that company does good practices, right, to bring change in the world, right? So a lot of investors do that also. And the last one is ESG integration, considering ESG during asset allocation and security selection events. Basically, जब ये स्टेप आता है ना, यहाँ पे ही आईपीएस के वक्त ही आप आपके इन्वेस्टमेंट मैनेजर को बोल दोगे दैट ईएसजी इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग फॉर मी. मेरा जो कोई भी डिसीजन लेना, ईएसजी के स्कोर के हिसाब से लेना, राइट? जो कंपनी का ईएसजी स्कोर, जो कंपनी का ओवरऑल एनवायरमेंटल, सोशल एंड गवर्नेंस एस्पेक्ट्स अच्छे हैं, मैं वहीं पे इन्वेस्ट करूंगा. Yeah. So yeah, guys, this was about the chapter. As I said, everything almost repetitive about the last chapter. But yeah, it is there, so it is there. It's my duty to explain you all. Any doubts, please go get back to me, and I'll see you in the next video.